Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the Bop Stop. Yeah, you can applaud. The Bop Stop is deserving. Thank you for coming out tonight. My name is Brian Kennard. I'm the director here at the Bop Stop. It's my pleasure to welcome you here on this pretty nice Wednesday that we had. Hopefully you got some time outside. So I know a couple of you came in here saying it was your first time, but how many of you are here for the first time tonight? Yeah, a couple of hands up in the air. So just to give you a little bit of background of the Bop Stop, the original Bop Stop was privately owned and established on East 40th in St. Clair, and then it moved to West 6th in the mid-90s. And then in the early 2000s, this fine establishment was built, this listening room. And for the rest of the decade, it was privately owned, and then the owners decided to close it down and sell the Bop Stop. But after a little bit of time, they had a change of heart, and instead they donated it to the Music Settlement. And the Music Settlement is a 110-year-old community music program right here in Cleveland, one of the oldest community music programs in the country. It's a nonprofit, has everything from early childhood care to music lessons and ensembles, music therapy. So there's a little bit of something for everyone at the Music Settlement. Check them out at themusicsettlement.org. And we are, of course, the fourth branch of the Music Settlement. And one of the cool things about being part of a nonprofit and having a bar is that we get to open up the bar at night and sell you drinks. And when you buy a drink, you are helping support music education right here in Cleveland, Ohio. So that's something to drink too. So cheers. So thank you for drinking for the children tonight. They appreciate it. Their parents also appreciate it. We are going through a little bit of a transition with our kitchen at the moment. So sorry if you came here hungry. We have some snacks available, but we're hopefully going to have something in the works very soon. So be on the lookout for that. Get on the email list. If you're not on our email list, we've got a sign-up sheet at the door. You can also sign up on the Music Settlement's website. So yeah. I'm going to keep it nice and short tonight because you're here for some great music. Although I did want to say, for those of you joining us on the live stream tonight, if you like what you hear and you want to donate to the performance tonight and directly support Gretchen, you can do so at the ticketing link for this page, which I'll share the link throughout the evening. My portion of the announcements have ended, so please welcome to the stage Gretchen Pleuss.
Thank you, Brian. Plugged in here. How's everybody doing? Good. Happy Wednesday. Thank you all for coming. I know I always really appreciate anybody that takes time out of their day. I know we're all super busy, so to come out and see me, I don't take lightly. Thank you. All right, so we are here tonight. If you didn't catch this, I'm here with Roots of American Music as well. So this is sort of an interesting series that they're doing, and I'm really honored to be a part of it. So let me read you a little bit about what they are doing. So this particular concert is presented in conjunction with Roots of American Music. Roots of American Music is also known as ROAM by its acronym. It's a nonprofit established in 1999, and it's based in Cleveland Heights, Ohio. ROAM integrates music and education in Northeast Ohio to create vibrant communities through art and vibrant art through community. More information on ROAM and ways for you to support them can be found at rootsofamericanmusic.org. And you can also visit the ROAM table by the entrance of the Bop Stop. So there is some more information over there as well by the entrance. Special thanks to Ohio Arts Council and Cuyahoga Arts and Culture for their support as well. And let's get started. So through this Lift Their Voices series, we musicians were also, given historical figures in music that are important to American music. So my particular figure that I'm featuring tonight is Buffy Sainte-Maria. I'm not sure if you're familiar with Buffy. Excellent. So what I want to do is just talk a little bit about what Buffy brings to the table, and how she has impacted folk music in particular, and also her communities, which is a huge part of her music. So I do have some notes because I get nervous when I'm talking and not when I'm singing, which makes no sense. So some of the notes that I have here are basically Buffy Sainte-Maria was named Beverly when she was born. She was born in 1941 in Saskatchewan, Canada, on the Payapot Reservation. Unfortunately, her mother died in a car crash, and she was actually adopted by a couple and raised in Massachusetts and Maine. So that's how she ended up in America. But because of her indigenous heritage, she continued to put that into her music and into her life's work. Her mother was of Cree descent, which is where the Payapot Reserve, it's a Cree reservation as well. So she was always sort of pulled to music as a child. She started out on piano, but she moved to guitar in her teenage years. And it wasn't until the 60s that she decided to move to New York to sort of be a part of the Greenwich Village scene, of Bob Dylan and other folk namesakes. So in 1963, actually, the New York Times, there was a critic that caught one of her sets and called her one of the most promising new talents on the folk scene. And from that one review, she actually landed essentially a record deal to make her first album, which is called It's My Way. And on It's My Way, you can recognize some of her more notable songs, like Now That the Buffalo's Gone, which is a critical account of America's mistreatment and systemic erasure of Native peoples. So she didn't really shy away from talking about things that affected indigenous nations, and that ultimately one of the sad parts about that is that because it became such an integral part of her music, she was blacklisted. So she became very involved in movements such as the American Indian movement, which is notably they helped occupy Alcatraz when there was an occupation of Alcatraz, which went on for, I want to say, 60 days. It was a long time. So they occupied essentially the prison cells in Alcatraz to bring awareness to the fact that was originally indigenous land. And so it was sort of the origin of the land back movement, which you might recognize now, which was where indigenous people were basically bringing attention to the fact that treaties were broken and that they had ancestry in this land, and they wanted to have that land back. So she was blacklisted not just for the American Indian movement, but also because she was very much involved in anti-war protests, and that's also in her music. You might recognize Universal Soldier was a big song of hers, which was on, I believe, her second album, Little Wheels Spin and Spin, which also had My Country, 'Tis of Thy People You're Dying, which is one of my favorite songs of hers, personally. I think it's just a really brilliant lyrical song. And that one in particular is about, again, sort of whitewashed history. So it was around that time that things became, there was more awareness being brought to the fact that indigenous peoples had not just been assimilated, but actually originally, there was genocide. So Buffy Sainte-Maria did not shy away from speaking of that. Even in interviews, she was sort of pushed back. She wasn't allowed to come on Johnny Carson until Sam Belafonte actually was interviewing her. So she wasn't given as much media exposure as she would have been had she not been talking about those things. And I also believe, and I think she would speak to this as well, that as an indigenous woman in particular, she sort of became, and she talks about this openly in a podcast I listened to by CBC, which she had some interviews with them talking about how, as an Indigenous woman in particular, there was this sense that she had to be sort of docile, and she could be pretty and talk about things that affected Indigenous people, but not in a way that made anybody else uncomfortable. And because she refused to sort of adhere to those standards and the society's expectations on that, she ended up really pushing a lot of people away. But she stuck with that, and she did take a long hiatus, but she came back in 1992 with a record that included some really interesting synth sounds, and she, sort of bridged that gap between this synthy, poppy thing that was going on in the 80s and 90s and her more traditional fingerstyle folk background. So yeah, I think one of the interesting things to me about Buffy is that she has never relented what is important to her, and I think that that is what makes her a really impactful person, but also a very impactful artist, because it takes a lot of salt to sort of stick to what you believe in and to be passionate and stay with that. And that is something that I have personally felt very connected to her, especially in doing more research into her life and her life's work. I knew her songs, from growing up. My parents would occasionally play Buffy, but I hadn't heard a lot of her discography because, like I said, I don't think it was given as much attention by the media back in the day as it could have been. But I'm really impacted personally by the fact that she cares deeply about, justice and about people and about, her people, which for her it's, Indigenous peoples. So I do want to take a moment too, because we're talking about Buffy. This is something that I've been doing. One of the things that I relate to her on is her, like I said, commitment to justice and to bringing attention to oppression. And so, like in my work, I also work in nonprofit work as well, like Roots of American Music. I believe it's important to acknowledge Native peoples and the fact that we are on their land and that we did break treaties. And I say we collectively, as you understand. I'm talking about the fact that this was originally land that was occupied and they were forced out. So I did want to actually do a land acknowledgement, if that's okay, if everybody's okay with that. So I did research the tribes that are from this area originally, and this is what a land acknowledgement looks like. I do this at work as well, so this is sort of, if you ever want to do this in your own settings, I think it's a really, it's a very bare minimum thing to do, I suppose, but it's very important because we at least acknowledge the fact that we're here. We acknowledge that we are gathering today on the lands of the Haudenosaunee peoples and the Anishinaabe peoples, also commonly known as the Potawatomi, Ojibwe, and Ottawa nations. So, without further ado, I am going to play a song of mine that I feel like is personally sort of inspired by Buffy, by other folk artists as well that have been talking about things that are in our American history. So in this song of mine, it's called One for All, and it's about essentially how our American history, the way that we talk about America, I think we love America. Everybody from America naturally loves America. I don't think it matters, what your background is. I think a lot of people, unless, I don't want to say that we love America in the sense of in a patriotic way necessarily. It's not that we love, for Indigenous peoples, like I said, for them, they have a different connotation of government. They have a different connotation of America, and I believe that is completely valid. But as a nation, we love each other. We love what we, say that we stand for. We love the idea of freedom. We love the idea of being a collective nation, and having, the American dream that we can pursue. We all love these values, but we don't always paint them in a way that acknowledges our origins and also the people that can easily be left behind because they already have so many obstacles that they were born with. So that's what this song is about. I sort of reference a few different demographics. Let's try that now. There we go. This song is the last song on my album that came out in 2019, Daughter of the Broader Skies. So if anybody wants a copy of that, I know CDs aren't necessarily a huge thing anymore, but you are welcome to get one from me later. Everybody's got lead and steel, but God forbid you behind the wheel. If your skin is brown as cedar grain, if the courts mispronounce your name, you can work in a grocery store. To pay for college, you can go to war. We'll throw you parties when you get back home, and 5 years later say the war was wrong. And that's the way that it's always been done. They're singing one for all and all for one, to drown the sound of you saying I can't breathe. There's no justice in reprieve. One man acquitted and one to grieve. Were you born on infertile land, where once a village, now a casino stands? They scoff at the whiskey on your breath, your minor infractions and petty theft. Remember when they put your parents there, gave them Bibles and cut their hair. You've seen the unmarked graves at Wounded Knee. You're not in prison, but you still aren't free. That's the way that it's always been done. They're singing one for all and all for one, to drown the sound of you singing when they reach Shawnee. They'll put the pipeline where they please. The eagle is screeching in the east. I may have been born in a trailer park. I may have been poor, but I was never dark. So how can I sing for someone I never knew? I would hope that he'd sing for me too. What good's a voice if you don't use it? What good is progress if you refuse it? What makes you think that we're so different, that you can't relate 'cause you never lived it? That's the way that it's always been done. They're singing one for all and all for one, to drown the sound of you screaming I'm still here. My skin is black as yours is fair. I never recited the Lord's Prayer, but I'm not going anywhere. Thank you. Thank you. So yeah, I think, well, I'm thinking about Buffy too. One of the other things that I really appreciate about her is that she, you know, it wasn't just that she was often painted as sort of this angry woman, angry Indigenous woman. And that was really unfair because a lot of what she wanted to do was just educate. And I think that's why this sort of series is important. I think, you know, we need to know where people were actually coming from versus how they were portrayed. And you know, why their legacy matters. So Buffy, for instance, with Sesame Street, you might remember in Sesame Street in the 1970s, the producers actually called her up, and I thought this was an interesting story. They called her up and they said, hey, would you come out and do an episode, you know, maybe do like the alphabet with the Muppets? And she was like, I'm not flying out there to do the alphabet. And then they were like, okay. And then she said, have you ever had an Indigenous, episode before where you feature things that are uniquely Indigenous? And they said, no, we haven't. Let me call you back. And then they hung up, and then they called back about a week later and said, we have an idea. What if you came out and were a semi-regular cast member and you did some educational bits on Indigenous culture? So that's sort of how she became a staple on Sesame Street for a while, is she pitched that idea. And in doing so, she actually brought awareness to things that people had otherwise, you know, gone, you know, their whole lives maybe without thinking about. But also she represented all of these Indigenous children that then were watching Sesame Street. And it was, you know, the first time that they were seeing maybe themselves represented on TV. And I think that was very important. So I remember that's how I first knew about Buffy, was Sesame Street. I remember watching the reruns and I remembered seeing her sing and thought, wow, she's a beautiful woman, but also what a beautiful voice. And it wasn't until later that I understood sort of the magnitude of what she actually accomplished, even on Sesame Street. So, all of that to say, never underestimate that what you do is important, even if it seems like it's not very important in the moment. I'm sure in the moment she thought she was just turning down Sesame Street. This next song is actually about, it's a song that's newer, and I'm releasing it in March, so if you follow me online, you'll get to hear it there. This is about writing songs that are important to me. Sometimes, you know, they're personal, but sometimes they're also about something I'm observing in the world. And I think that that's part of art, is that you observe and then you put it into a medium that you're comfortable with. And, you know, in doing so, sometimes people aren't going to agree, and that's okay. But I think I was told one time to stop doing it, and it made me just write this song instead. I don't wanna sing no more. Nobody listens like before. I'm just taking up space. It's neither the time nor the place. I should leave my opinions at the door. Maybe I'm just tired now. Why don't I just lie down with the rest of you? 'Cause that's what you do. You cover your ears when it's hard to hear. He sings just like a bird, puts a melody behind your fear and hurt. So you smile and nod along and say, I think I know this song, tired now. Why don't you just sit down and see what we've done? All the webs we've spun. Uncover your eyes and break all those ties. And stir the pot until it's hot, till it's hot. You can stir the pot until it's hot, till it's hot. You can stir that pot until it's hot, till it's hot. You can stir that pot, stir that pot. I don't wanna sing no more, when I may as well be singing to the floor. They say stay in your lane, just be selfish, just be vain, for the sake of your brand name, for the sake of someday fame. No one cares to make it change, no one cares to share the blame, no one cares you got a brain, no one cares. So I'll paint my face and be quiet. Maybe then you will buy it. Thank you. Thanks, guys. Appreciate it. All right. Well, I feel like after two sort of heavy songs, it's probably best to bring you back up a little bit. So here's a song about being lonely. A uniquely human feeling. This one's called Everybody's Pretty. That last one was called Stir the Pot. I don't think I mentioned that. I take the F train from Harlem to Queens, 3 days in the same hat and jeans. Walk in a cafe and order some eggs. Notice a stranger staring at my legs. He says I'm not like anyone he's known before. I'm equal parts love and war. Well, I'm not a concept or so says Kate. There's parts of me he'd learn to hate. Parts of me I already hate. And though I hold him, I already let him go. The one I thought was still in Ohio. But freedom is lonely, and so is this city where everybody's lonely, 'cause everybody's pretty. A man admires my fingers. He jokes he often falls for folk singers who say something profound and bring people together. But I just want to talk about the weather with a man took and his wife from Germany. I think of the kind of wife that I would be, always leaving and returning, but never being fully there, acting cold and unforgiving even when I care, especially when I care. And if I had him, I'd just as soon let him go. The one I love is still in Ohio. But freedom is lonely, and so is this city where everybody's lonely, 'cause everybody's pretty. Everybody's pretty. When I get to the station, I'll be reflecting on my week, wonder what it is I seek. I'm not sure if it's God, I'm not sure if it's money, or reciprocation from a man who doesn't want me. I guess that's why I travel, I guess that's why I'm running. I can't be hounded when I'm hunting. And I like the way I feel when my hair and face are gritty. I'm the last girl on earth you would pity. I never asked for your pity. And though I hold him, I've already let him go. The one I love is still in Ohio. But freedom is lonely, and so is this city where everybody's lonely, 'cause everybody's pretty. Everybody's pretty. Everybody's pretty. Everybody's pretty. Thank you. Thanks so much, you guys. I bought a watch recently, which I feel like nobody has watches anymore because they all have phones. Although the phones are now in the watches, so I hear. I refuse to get one because I don't want anybody to know that they can get a hold of me. So this is just a basic watch, but it feels so much better than pulling out my phone. Now you guys know I'm not trying to text anybody. All right, I wrote this next song about, I was reading a book called The Lost City of Z, and Percy Fawcett is the, I don't want to say the main character, but he is sort of the person followed in the book. Percy Fawcett was an explorer in the early 1900s that went missing, and it's still a big mystery about what happened to him and his son. Personally, I feel like if you go out into the middle of the jungle, I don't know. There's no way to tell what's going to happen to you. So it's a huge mystery, and it was a very fascinating book. And I thought more so his life was fascinating, and the type of person that he was really interesting. But the mystery to me is how it's a mystery, because I don't really, like I said, having been to only the buffer zone of the Amazon, that was enough. So they have very, very large cats. That being said, I think people that aren't really afraid of death are very interesting to me. Very interesting. I used to not be afraid of death. And I think that's part of being, under 25. Unless you're Percy Fawcett, in which case you have Arrested Development. But honestly, people like that are very interesting to me because they tend to do really amazing things in life because aren't afraid of living it to its full extent. So I wrote this song about that feeling. Searching for my heart in some foreign land, a pursuit only Percy Fawcett would understand. Floating down river in some harsh terrain, I feel at ease while any other would go insane. 'Cause there are splendors only God himself would know. If we never ventured, if we chose not to go. Most people cower when the future is unclear, but a scripted future is the only thing I fear. I dream of mountains, I dream of trees, I dream of everything but a husband and babies. I've got no money, I can't hold a job, 'cause there's always somewhere to be and somewhere that I'm not. 'Cause there are splendors only God himself would know. If we never ventured, if we chose not to go. Most people cower when the future is unclear, but a scripted future is the only thing I fear. Never before have I explored the stealth of my inner self, the workings of my core. I wanna lay down under the stars. I don't wanna see the sky from the window of my car. I wanna let go, I wanna feel free, enjoy the contentment of my own company. 'Cause there are splendors only God himself would know. If we never ventured, if we chose not to go. Most people cower when the future is unclear, but a scripted future is the only thing I fear. But a scripted future is the only thing I fear. Thank you. Thank you. Cheers. Is that Googie? Can't see under the lights. So this one's for Googie. All right, I have a couple more for you. I always write set lists and then I never follow them. This is never, yeah, they're exactly, they're suggestions. I don't think I follow rules very well either. So, thanks for trusting me on this stage tonight. I think I'm going to do this next one is actually a newish one. I haven't recorded it just yet, so if you like it, that's too bad. Maybe someday. This is a song about falling in love. and how terrifying of a feeling that can be. I often say that the butterflies that you feel in your stomach, that's like the common sense leaving your body. It's like just floating away. So that's how I feel when I'm on the verge of falling in love, is sort of like there's impending doom. I don't know if that's how everybody else feels, but that's how I feel. So this one is called Stray Cat. Everything I do seems to hurt someone, and everything I've ever done, leaving coffee on the pot until it catches fire, burning ants out in the sun. Scratching at my bedroom door. I've never had a reason not to turn my back. I've never felt like that before. I've been stocking up on seeds in case I plant a garden. You don't know what that's about until you search for food all day to find it's in your stomach, until you're drinking in a drought. I never let a feeling in like some stray cat scratching at my bedroom door. I've never had a reason not to turn my back. I've never felt like that before. Maybe I'm wrong, diving headfirst in a murky pond. Maybe you're right, I've never had a constant in my life. Never had someone to take the knife, cut me loose and keep me by his side. I never let a feeling in like some stray cat scratching at my bedroom door. I've never had a reason not to turn my back. I've never felt like that before. I've never felt like that before. I've never felt like that before. Thank you. Thanks so much, you guys. depression setting in. Who can tell?
It's a good song.
Thank you. All right, I'm going to try this next one. I just put this song out I don't know, last month. This one's called Hills Are on Fire. And this is just a side note. So one of Buffy's songs on that 1992 record that she put out almost didn't make it to the album. It was called Bury My Heart at Wounded Knee. The record label was like, no, we don't really want that. And she was like, well, it has to go on there. So it went on there. And it's a great song. It's sort of, it's, you know, in the traditional, she talks about the history of you know, oppression for Native peoples. But she also, it sort of takes on this vibe of being an anthem and like an empowering, we can, you know, we're still here. We're still you know, no one got rid of us. We're here. So I think it's a really beautiful song. And, you know, like I said, Buffy is of Cree descent, but Wounded Knee is actually a massacre that happened in Pine Ridge Reservation in South Dakota. So Wounded Knee was, it was a massacre in the 1800s. That's the only way to call it. It's a Wounded Knee massacre. But so it's one of the most famous ones. There's a very famous book called Bury My Heart at Wounded Knee by Dee Brown. And having been to Wounded Knee and to Pine Ridge Reservation, there's a really stark, it's a stark feeling to look at Wounded Knee, where it's unmarked graves, and it's not all exhaustive. There's only a few crosses, you know, there's just a few graves, and to know how many people are actually out there unmarked, women and children, you know, and men. It's just a really stark feeling, and it's such a stark place. So if you've never been to the Badlands or the Black Hills, it's a gorgeous, gorgeous place, but also really desolate. And I think that really kind of captures the essence of life as an Indigenous person too. You know, on the reservation, it's very, the land is beautiful, but it's also, like I said, desolate. And I think that sort of, it, to me as an artist, when I look at something, landscapes, when I look at nature, when I look at a building even, you know, it has an emotion tied to it. So that's the emotion. I go back actually to South Dakota basically once a year, and I wrote this song based on the feeling I get now that I go there every year, about the hills and about the Badlands. To me now it's become sort of a feeling of like the outside world sort of melts away, and it becomes a sense of home, and not just home in the sense of the landscape and the place itself, but how I feel with myself when I'm there. So this song captures that feeling of returning to your inner self and your inner child, and creating a space for home, even if you don't necessarily have a home. And I think my roundabout point that I'm getting to here is that, you know, there's a sense of being displaced that is a part of Indigenous culture, because they are displaced peoples. They just like, you know, it's similar to a refugee experience. I don't want to say it's similar because it's a totally separate experience, but the feeling of being displaced is a feeling that I can never personally have. However, you know, I have also had to create my own sense of home, and I think that when you are in a place like South Dakota, it forces you to find that sense of home in yourself. So this one is called Hills Are on Fire, which is how they look at sunrise and sunset, because you can see so far. silent hills are on fire. I know you're tired of letting go. If nothing's lost, nothing is gained. We're just wind in the plains, a steady blow. And love swallows me like a river, it spits me out and delivers me back to you. Watch the sky opening doors. Those stars are yours to guide you home. Keep the night deep in my brain. It's keeping me sane when I'm alone. And love swallows me like a river, spits me out and delivers me back to you. Me back to you. Oh, it's so brand new. Back to you. Back to you. So brand new. Back to you. 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 Think the silent hills are on fire. Never grow tired of letting go. Thank you. Thank you so much. All right, so this next one is called Open Door. And there's not really a story with this one, I guess. It's just about love lost, which I think is a very human experience too. This one's called Open Door. It's always an open door. I've said it before. You can come and go. I never say what I want. I'm never blunt. I'm both yes and no. Your every fear exposed, every pacing ghost on a hardwood floor. What you looking for? What can we share if you're never there? I thwarted 50 states for Stan Hewitt's gates in my first light show. I wouldn't take it back, though I've taken on my mind, and I hate the snow. Maybe I'll go somewhere real hot to hide from this thought. Nostalgia has its way with me. The past has its allure. Though I count the days like sheep, I don't sleep like I did before. And when I do, I dream of you pouring 2 glasses of wine. And when I wake, I have to shake the hope that one of them is mine. No, not this time. There was never a win, just now and then. It's always an open door. I've said it before. You can come and go. Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you. Oh, I got time for 1 or 2 more. I gotta say thank you guys so much for coming tonight. It's nice to see all of these familiar faces. All right, so this next one I actually I wrote about a couple years ago, about Syrian refugees. Sort of got my head thinking. We were talking about displaced peoples, and especially now considering the earthquake and everything that happened, it's just been on my mind with Turkey and Syria. So this was one I wrote when essentially what was going on is, there was an influx of Syrian refugees, and we were, preparing to turn them away, and we did turn them away. And I got to thinking about, just how many times America is really good about, letting refugees in. I don't want to discredit that. However, I just feel like, we get this panic. I think there's always a panic when there's a big global crisis, and we kind of go into panic mode and say, no, shut down the, close up shop. We can't let anybody else in. And the reality is, if we don't let them in, then where do they go? And that is, I think, when we're talking about Statue of Liberty, when people see the Statue of Liberty, that's supposed to say, come on in, and you're welcome here, no matter where you're from or what you're going through. That's the America that I like to believe in. And I wrote this song about that, in particular about borders and how we get wrapped up into being countries, and we forget that at the root of it all, we're all people. We're people with families and loved ones, and we care about each other. And if it was your family, you would want somebody to treat you with that empathy and respect. So this one's called Borders. Somewhere someone is starving to death. Somebody's daughter is taking her last breath. My nothing like you and yours. It makes it easy to justify these wars. Living on water, living on salt. Those are our children, and this is our fault. No. Of strangers, the question of when. So give him your masses, you're poor and you're meek. He'll lend you his hand, but Sam's grip is weak. He'll lend you his hand, but Sam's grip is weak. 'Cause they look nothing like you and yours. It makes it easy to justify these wars. Living on water, living on salt. Those are our children, and this is our fault. This is our fault. You look nothing like us and ours. It makes it easy to justify these powers. Living on money, living on fear. We're just children, and that much is clear. That much is clear. That much is clear. No, 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 no. Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you, guys. I appreciate you listening. You what? Oh, I wish. Sorry. I thought about covering some of Buffy's songs, but I didn't have enough time to prepare to the preparation that I wanted to present it, because I feel like her songs are so powerful, and if you drop the ball, I don't pull it off as well. This has been a challenge in a good way, because for me, as a white woman, it is hard to speak for an Indigenous woman, because that's such a different experience, and I don't want to take away from that. So that's also I've been a little bit nervous about it, because, for as much as I like to believe that I champion Indigenous rights, and some of my closest friends are Indigenous. I never want to speak for them. And I think that's what I like about Buffy so much, is that she doesn't allow you to really speak for her. She speaks for herself. And that's sort of the impact she's had on not only her own, people, Indigenous peoples, but also the impact she's had on music. I think that she taught a lot of women of color and other Indigenous women in particular that they could take up space. So I don't want to take away from that. All right, so I think I'm going to play. Do I have time for one more? Where's George? There you are. Should I do one more? Awesome. Thank you all so much for listening. I really appreciate it. You've been really great. Make sure I'm in tune for this last one. Don't want to leave you on a sour note. Okay, so this last one I'm going to play is off of my record from 2019, Daughter of the Broader Skies. It's called Sheepish, which is really hard to say, and I recognize that in retrospect, that naming a song Sheepish is not very kind to anybody that wants to repeat it. But it's about, again, sort of that feeling of being afraid of saying what is right. So sometimes saying what is right and doing what is right is the hardest thing to do and say, and that's where this is coming from. So I was touring in the South, and I love the South. I think it's amazing. But there is sort of this politeness, the Southern politeness that you have to adhere to, and I think that sometimes other things need to be said. So I was traveling on Martin Luther King Day is when this song actually sort of came to me. And I won't go into detail, but the place that I was supposed to stay fell through, and I ended up just going to a hotel, and it was late at night. It was like a Days Inn. And the lady at the front desk, she was so sweet. She was, a little older, and she instantly, was like, let's get to a room. And she saw my guitar, and she was like, oh my gosh, you play guitar? And I was like, yeah. And she said, would you put on a concert for, everybody down here? And I was like, there's nobody down here. And I looked, it was just us, and it was like 11 p.m. And she was like, okay, well, you come back in half an hour, and I will have a crowd out here. So I went in to my hotel room that she, let me into, and I was sitting there, and I was like, she couldn't be serious, Next thing I know, like a half an hour later, I get a phone call in the hotel room, and I answer it, and she's like, hello, it's Phyllis. I have a crowd for you down here, so I know that you're watching probably Jeopardy like me, but come on in, and so I went into the lobby and played for like 10 people, including her. And I remember it was such a beautiful, like very spontaneous experience, but one of the ladies that was there was just getting off of her shift. She was one of the people on the cleaning team, and she was really emotional, and I overheard, I was talking to her and Phyllis, and I overheard them, basically going back and forth, and they hugged, and then the lady left, and Phyllis was like, well, she's got to go home to her son because he's getting locked up tomorrow for, the foreseeable future. And just to iterate for the story, they both were Black women, and this woman that was leaving, she was just so emotional, and I started thinking about it, like about how justice works in this country too, and how we have a long way to go in regard to, I don't know his story, I have no idea what her son did or what he had done, but I did think about the experience that is different for white families versus Black families, and especially in the South. So I was thinking about all of these things as I'm on tour, and it just happened to be that was the night before Martin Luther King Day. And so I wrote this song the next day, just thinking about how far we've come and yet how far we have to go when it comes to acknowledging the sort of reciprocal or the residual effects of systemic racism in this country. So this is called Sheepish, and it's about being able to acknowledge those things so that we can move forward and be better to all people. And I don't think, acknowledging our mistakes is going to say that we are weak or that we aren't a great country. I think that it just means that we have work to do. From the Gulf of Alabama, from Montgomery to Atlanta, the bumper stickers match the textbook description of fabulous and South tradition. It's hard for me to collect my thoughts. I find it's easier to get lost, 'cause we draw lines and we build walls. We've got the map but never look at it at all. Miss Lucy holds her son tight the night before. He's sentenced to 30 years or more. It's April 3rd here from the mountaintop. I'm searching for God at a truck stop, singing, Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want for wolves, though I leave this herd, I am still sheepish, and I'm still sleepless. I suppose our weakness is we want feign bliss. From Carolina to Virginia, there's not a trace or taste or hint of grace she granted me in Mississippi in her home. This is for every woman who's ever felt alone, begging her boss, do you not see me? On her knees pleading, believe me, singing, Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want for wolves, though I leave this herd, I am still sheepish, and I'm still sleepless. I suppose my weakness is I won't feign bliss. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want for wolves, though I leave this herd, I am still sheepish, and I'm still sleepless. I suppose our weakness is we want feign bliss. so much for listening, everybody. Appreciate it. Thank you. Thank you all. Thank you. Thank you, guys. Should I invite George up?
Yeah, we're gonna record a podcast on stage here.
How do you guys feel about that? Cool.
Yeah, Gretchen!
Thanks for listening to all these songs, and it really does warm my heart to be here and be involved with Roots of American Music. I am going to just remind you once again with my handy paper, because I go off script a lot. That's the wrong one. Again, off script. But again, this concert tonight was presented and is presented in conjunction with Roots of American Music, which is also known as Rome, and it's a nonprofit that's been in existence since 1999, based in Cleveland Heights, Ohio. Rome integrates music and education in Northeast Ohio to create vibrant communities through art and vibrant art through community. More information on Rome and ways for you to support can be found at rootsofamericanmusic.org. There's also information over at that table near the entrance. And special thanks to Ohio Arts Council and Cuyahoga Arts and Culture for their support. Roots of American Music does amazing things in the community, so if you have not been aware of them until tonight, definitely check them out and support what they do.
So we're gonna get this mic set up in a little.
Cool.
So if you want to set the good.
Yeah, I'll put it down.
Set up. You can unplug.
Unplug, cool. You guys are also welcome to go grab a drink, so you don't feel awkward just watching this setup switch up. Oh, never mind. Don't go get drinks.
I mean, go get drinks, but you'll just have to wait for me.
Just grab whatever you want. Just kidding. What? I don't blame you. I'll mess with it. I'll just do this. I thought that would be more graceful. There we go. I'm good right now. Thank you. You're awesome.
Check, check.
Hi. Yeah. I'm sure. I'm ready.
Okay. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the interview portion of the event. I'm George Blake, a board member of Roots of American Music, and we're going to turn this into a podcast with Evergreen Podcasts. So we're going to do the recording moment right now. Hello, Gretchen.
Hi, George.
I'm going to ask us to start off with Rome's mission statement.
Absolutely.
And so if I can just get out some key words here. So Rome integrates music and education in Northeast Ohio to create vibrant communities through art and vibrant art through community. Could you say a little bit about how that mission state resonates with you? Maybe how art and community have worked together in your own life?
Yeah, absolutely. So I would say that for me, art begets community. Like, it is it's integral to community. And I think that people tend to think that if they aren't artistic or aren't artists, that they can't be a part of art. But art is what brings humans together. I mean, I don't know if for me, I think about it in a sort of a scientific way. Before we can even speak, before we even talk, we have language, we know music. Babies know music. Music is really a part of a very human experience before us. I think tonality is. And in the same way, I think art is a reflection of our experience. So, landscapes, it can feel like a piece of art, even just at looking at it. So I think that art and community are naturally connected, And I think that for me, it's inspiring to be a part of community that embraces art as a part of that community, bringing community together. So I don't think that there's any one style of art that's particular to, one group of people. I think that art is something that is uniquely human, and it brings people together no matter what medium, no matter what type of music. It's something that everybody can enjoy, and I think that when we get back to the essence of art, that's what brings community together.
Great. So, one of the things that struck me in learning about Buffy Sainte-Maria, early on she had this great ear, and she was sort of figuring out how to do music on her own, and she sort of said that she was given permission by Winnie, her mother, to not have to be approved of by her music teacher, and to not do things. There were other valid ways of doing things outside of the formal thing. So I don't know. I guess could you talk a little bit about how you came into the world of music and how it became a part of your life?
Yeah, I relate to that too. I think I was always drawn to music, even as a kid. We had a piano in my house, and I would sit there and play it. And at the time, in my childhood, the time when I was really interested in music, in the piano in particular, it wasn't really possible for my family to get me lessons, nor did we really have the time. We were sort of in this weird situation where that wasn't a possibility. But I held on to that love of music, and I still wanted to be a part of it. And I would sing all the time in the car. One time, my mom actually heard me singing along to Lady Marmalade, which was a real hit, if you remember. And I was singing along to that song, and she was like, "Oh my gosh, I didn't realize you could sing." So when my aunt gave me a guitar that was previously used by my cousin, and he didn't really take up to it, she gave me this guitar, and I went back to my mom and I said, "I really want to play this, and I don't know how." And she found a friend of hers that was willing to give me lessons, and because we couldn't really afford it, he gave them to me for free. It was just a gift, and I think he thought, oh, she's going to lose interest in about 2 or 3 lessons, and I won't have to do this anymore, to be nice. And instead, I really fell in love with it. And he was teaching me fingerstyle classical, trying to teach me by tab, seeing if I could sight read. I couldn't sight read, and I was really bad at reading tab, but I didn't want him to know that, so I would pretend that I was reading the tab, but I was actually learning by ear. So eventually, the truth came out, but I've learned by ear, and I instead of letting that sort of hold me back with regard to getting better at the craft, I actually sort of honed in on that and I didn't distract myself too much with trying to relearn it a different way, if that makes sense. Even though it would make it easier if I could sight read, I decided to stay focused on how I wanted to do it, which was by ear, so that I could learn really how to structure melody and to create really original melodies based on what I was hearing versus necessarily what I was reading.
Yeah, great. I guess I'll ask you now about the Northeast Ohio part of our mission statement. I think Cleveland isn't necessarily known as having a vibe like Greenwich Village or some of those places that were formative for our featured historical figure. Although I will note that Buffy Sainte-Maria talks about going to see the Alan Freed show in New York City when she was young, and seeing Joanne Campbell and being like, wow, that's a cool thing to do. So could you say a little bit about how music in Northeast Ohio are part of your life?
Yeah, I think that's what's funny is actually Northeast Ohio became sort of the community that I needed to really flourish with art, and I think that's because there is not an expectation. So you go to Nashville or you go to New York or you go to some of these bigger meccas of art and music where it's just, this is what's expected of you and this is how you should position yourself and present yourself. And in Northeast Ohio, it's Rust Belt, it's Midwestern. You are who you are. And to really embrace that artistically is, I think, what makes some of the music that comes out of Northeast Ohio in particular really amazing. You can really explore your own voice, and that's something that you might not get somewhere else. So to me, that's why Ohio, in particular Northeast Ohio, will always be very special to me.
Cool. And yeah, are there people who kind of serve as connectors? You know, I mean, one thing that's interesting about, I guess, you know, Buffy was walking around with Joni Mitchell's cassette and playing it for people and trying to lift up this other artist. Has that kind of experience been part of your life, where you're connecting with younger artists or older artists are connecting with you?
Yeah, absolutely. I've been really fortunate to be around especially older musicians that have sort of taken me under their wing. You know, I've, in ways that I didn't think that I think that when you're an artist who, or you're presenting your own song, you don't know how it's going to be received. And it's not that that matters, but to be acknowledged by another songwriter, for instance, is something that's really important for when you're deciding to pursue it, to continue. So for instance, you know, I've had multiple people in this area uplift me, like Brent Kirby with, you know, the 10 by 3 and giving, you know, open mics up here. Yeah, exactly, for Brent Kirby. But there are so many more that I could name, and I will say too, even just from a broader perspective, older musicians, you know, that are more entrenched in sort of the music industry have been very helpful in a way that I didn't expect them to be. So Bill Payne from Little Feat was invited me up to sing with him and play some songs with him, only after hearing a couple songs of mine. And I think that takes a lot of salt to do as somebody that's really entrenched in their own career and their own journey. So that's something that is very important, though, and I think it's something that's taught me as an artist how important it is to uplift other artists. So, you know, I started an open mic in Akron because I wanted, you know, I started that with my roommate at the time, Jose, because I wanted to give back to people that were just starting out and to give them that confidence boost, and so give them a space where they could play and be listened to, and then encouraged with like very specific, you know, feedback. Like, I really liked that first line, you know, that was a really good hook, or whatever it was, because those things do matter in the long run.
Yeah. So, you know, it was a real pleasure to kind of delve into some of the stuff written about Buffy Sainte-Maria and some other things and getting to this. And so one of my favorite quotes that I got from Andrew Werner's authorized biography with the foreword by Joni Mitchell of Buffy Sainte-Maria is, it has to do with Sesame Street, but it's also pretty deep. So she's talking about being an activist, and one of her things is, for being effective for her means reflecting the light and not blocking it. And that's sort of about activism and ego, and kind of her own style of being in the world in this way that's very, you know, very compelling in some ways. But one thing she says about having about a need to continually teach people, and just there's always like this starting over with a lot of these projects, and so there's always a new generation needing the basics, like Sesame Street. And so she's kind of reflecting on her own experience on the street, and also how there's always a kind of beginning for some people. So, yeah, I guess with that, I think I'm curious to say, you know, how have younger musicians been part of your life, or, you know, what's up with Sesame Street, and how was that formative to you?
So, yeah, I mean, there's some of the younger musicians that I've seen, you know, that are a little younger than me, that are coming up, through that open mic, through other experiences where I've been a part of a bill, and there's a younger band, or some of these younger artists. I think what's interesting to me is like seeing, I am somewhat a part of that same generation. However, people that are younger always have a fresh perspective, and they also have, I think as you get older, as an artist, you have to sort of shed, like Buffy's saying, like you almost have to like shed skin. You have to like start over constantly because you can get really hardened, you can get cold, you can get sort of stuck in your ways, whatever it might be. So you being around younger musicians or younger artists, and remembering not only that you're setting an example, but also that you can learn from them and it's symbiotic is really important. So I try to take that into every situation. You know, I think especially in the music industry, there's a tendency for older people to actually be threatened by younger musicians because we're told that it's a young person's game, right? And if you can actually switch that viewpoint and say, how can I, you know, help positively influence this person while they also teach me how to let go of my own, you know, whatever baggage I've taken into this next chapter. So that would be my main experiences. I try to do that with everything. And with Sesame Street, I grew up with PBS and all things, you know, public TV, public stations. Sesame Street was really, it was of course on in my house. I remember I didn't like Elmo because my sister had a stuffed Elmo that would talk, and occasionally it would talk when nobody was around it. So that was very creepy to me. So I decided based on that alone that my favorite Muppet was Grover. Because he wasn't in all of them and he didn't talk all the time. And so when he did talk, it was very like, oh, Grover's there.
Right,
you know?
Sort of has like sort of self-confidence issues and
right.
Yeah, Buffy likes him for that same reason. Yeah, and
exactly.
I mean, I was asking you a similar question earlier, and you're just kind of like, yeah, like the Muppets, they're just like a really good group.
They are a good group.
Just like in terms of like one of the best groups of all time.
Yeah. they make some killer music too.
Really
Let's be honest.
Let's be real for a minute here. Real talk. Yeah. So I mean, I think one thing that's has maybe shifted a little bit is the pressure of the internet, of technology, and these things, and maybe that's something that is not going to impact someone with an acoustic guitar, and maybe it is. But I mean, I think I was kind of tracking the discography of Buffy Sainte-Maria, and Illuminations in the late 60s is like this really electronic music kind of thing. She's doing sampling in the 70s. Arguably, she's the first person to create an album using the internet in the early 90s. You know, there's all these ways in which she's, as Ann Power says, more Bjork and Kate Bush than Joan Baez. You know, that she's really like invested in these, really taking on new technological ideas and things like that. And so yeah, I guess, do you have any thoughts on how technology is shaping the world you're in and how you relate to it as an artist?
Yeah, I think technology, like Buffy too, and other some other artists like her that aren't afraid to try something new. I think that's something that I try to keep in mind. So even like when I collaborate with other people, like this doesn't have to sound like me. This can sound totally different because I'm not a purist. I think, you know, obviously I have a specific style with acoustic guitar, and my voice is generally pretty soft, so I can only do so many things. However, technology, I've learned to like embrace it instead of push it away. You know, I'm not as, I will say for my own mental health, I have to separate myself from social media sometimes because it's just, there's too much stimulation. And also it becomes sort of a sounding board, and there's a lot of comparison that goes into that. Technology is like a double-edged sword. We can connect with each other, but we can also really damage each other. But when it comes to art, I think that technology has been helpful in a lot of ways, other than Spotify. I digress. But in other ways, it's been really helpful because it's forced artists to sort of get recreative. So they have to like reinvent themselves and find new ways to sort of advance what they were already working on and experiment.
Yeah. So with that, I'll check my high-tech timer
Yeah.
here. And okay, so I think we'll have to close up in a second here. But so we're at a 110-year-old community music school right now, and you know, one of the powerful, and we're celebrating community and art. And you know, one thing that the music for me, I came up as a music school settlement kid. And it was very important to me to like learn to be a person through this. And so I just want to give one quote from Buffy Sainte-Maria where she says like, I'm in love with the world. It's a little dorky. And so, I guess
that.
could you say, and some of her favorite artists are Edith Piaf, Carmen Amaya, some of the indigenous drumming traditions that she sampled and worked with across a variety of different groups. Could you just say a little bit about something you love in music?
Yeah, I just love that music can transport you. So for me as a kid, I think, not to go into detail, but for me it was really important. For instance, reading and music were the things that I used not to escape my life, but to sort of recreate it. So I could transport myself and be myself in a different setting. And that was I think that's something that as when you're in your formative years, it's really important. And I really held on to those artists when I was growing up that were good at transporting you. So, I actually didn't really get into more traditional folk music until later. Earlier, it was weird stuff like you said, Kate Bush and Tori Amos. I was very into. I loved Fiona Apple too, but I was very into a lot of the '90s women. But I think my favorite was Tori Amos. Growing up, I would just put her on repeat, and I would write short stories while I was listening to her because she could literally transport me into like another realm, and that was sort of her thing. And yeah, I totally relate to that quote by Buffy. It is dorky. The world is dorky, and if you can't put that into art, then and embrace that about music and art, and also use it to embrace your own inner dork, then you're doing it wrong.
Yeah, being a dork's totally the way to be. So when she was growing up, she talked about going ice skating, and in her head she'd have Tchaikovsky playing while she was ice skating on a lake, and it was like the way Andrea Warner puts it is like it was a more nuanced architecture than the world she lived in. And
right.
I was like, oh, that's a good way to put it.
Beautiful.
Nice writing there. And then she also talks about listening to Maybelline in her head as like a little kid out on the ice skating on the pond.
Yeah, I relate to that too, because I think you're told, even I was still very imaginative even when I was a teenager, and I think that having an early introduction and falling in love with music and art early was really important for that. It's made me a more imaginative person even now. Sometimes I imagine scenarios that aren't real, but most of the time it's very beneficial because I'm sitting there thinking of, how could I do this better? Or, oh my gosh, can you imagine a world that looked like this instead of this? And I think that's, I think that people that can grab onto that early, I think it's in all of us, it's even more important because it's harder to reintroduce yourself to that later.
All right, great. Well, I think we'll have to close here. So could you just give us some last words of how we can follow you on social media or where we can find you next?
Sure. My social media, I am one of only 2 Gretchen Pleusses, I believe, in the world. My last name is spelled Pleuss, so if you search Gretchen Pleuss, you'll see my website and Instagram and Facebook. I don't have any shows booked at the moment, but I plan to, and I do have a new song coming out on March 3rd. So keep an eye on that. You'll see it on Spotify.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks again, everybody. Yeah, it was fun. Thanks.